Have you ever felt alone in your impossible mission to keep your house clean and organized? I know exactly what that's like. After years of trying to get my family to take part in household chores and failing miserably, I found that waiting for help from others only brought me frustration. That's when I decided to take charge of the situation and developed a method that revolutionized my domestic routine. Do you know that feeling of coming home after a tiring day and finding everything in order? It sounds like a dream, doesn't it? But I can assure you that it is possible, even if you're the only person involved. When I started applying the techniques I'm about to share with you, my husband even asked me if I'd hired a diarist. Little did he know that the secret lay in small changes to my routine. The first way I discovered to keep everything in order was what I call the 15-minute rule. Every day, as soon as I wake up, I dedicate exactly 15 minutes to organizing the basics. I set a timer on my cell phone and set off tidying up whatever I see in front of me. It's amazing how much we can get done in such a short space of time when we're focused. At first, I thought it was too little time, but I realized that consistency is more important than duration. The second technique that changed my life was preventive cleaning. Instead of waiting for dirt to accumulate, I started cleaning small areas during everyday activities. For example, while I'm waiting for the coffee to brew, I wipe down the kitchen worktop. When I'm on the phone, I wipe down the nearest piece of furniture. These are small actions that, when added up, make a huge difference at the end of the day. The third secret is what I've dubbed the clutter-free zone. I chose a room in the house, in my case, the living room, and established that it would always be kept in order. This has created an interesting domino effect. Having at least one room always organized not only gives me peace of mind but also inspires me to keep the rest of the house tidier. It's like having an oasis of organization that positively contaminates the other spaces. I remember trying to convince my family to help me organize. It was a daily battle that only left me stressed and frustrated. When I changed my approach and started focusing on what I could do, everything became lighter. And you know what's interesting? The more I kept the house in order on my own, the more my family started to notice, and little by little, some positive changes began to happen naturally. The fourth strategy one implemented was to create organization stations at strategic points in the house. These are small spaces dedicated to storing specific items, such as a basket for mail near the entrance, hooks for keys and bags, and a box for items that need to be stored elsewhere. This prevents things from being scattered around the house and makes it much easier to keep things in order. The fifth way I've discovered to keep everything in order is what I call the final 5 minutes method. Before I go to bed, I do a quick sweep of the house. It's not a deep clean, but a basic organization that makes all the difference when starting the next day. I collect forgotten glasses, fold blankets from the sofa, put away remote controls. It's amazing how these small actions save us so much stress in the morning. When I started applying this method, my teenage daughter even commented, "Mom, how do you manage to keep everything so tidy?" That's when I realized that I was not only organizing the house, but also setting an example. Even if they don't actively help, they're learning by example, and that's worth a lot more than fighting and demanding. The sixth strategy is what I call a place for everything. It sounds obvious, but it was revolutionary when I started applying it for real. Each item in the house was given its own specific place, and I committed myself to always returning it there after use. It was challenging at first. I confess I had to make a few mind maps to remember where I had decided to store each thing. But after a few weeks, it became automatic. I remember when I found my husband's shoes scattered around the living room every day. Instead of fighting, I created a specific space near the entrance, with a bench and a shoe rack. I didn't say anything, I just started putting his shoes there. After a while, I realized that he was naturally using the space himself. Sometimes change starts with our own actions, not with words. The seventh and final way is what I call the rotation system. I divided the house into zones and set specific days to take more care of each one. For example, on Mondays I focus on the bathrooms, on Tuesdays on the kitchen, and so on. This allows me to keep everything clean without overloading myself trying to do everything in one day. One interesting discovery I made was that when I stopped waiting for help from the family and took control of the situation, my stress levels dropped considerably. Not that I didn't want help, of course it would be great to have support, but I realized that my peace of mind couldn't depend on the actions of others. And you know what's most amazing? When I stopped demanding and fighting, small spontaneous initiatives began to emerge. My youngest son started putting his toys away without me asking. My husband started clearing the dishes from the table after dinner. These are small gestures, but they mean a lot when they happen naturally. The secret lies in creating systems that work for you, regardless of the participation of others. It's like when you organize your bag, only you know exactly where each thing is and how you prefer to keep it in order. The same principle applies to the home. When you take control and establish your own methods, everything flows better. Something I've learned along this journey is that keeping your home organized doesn't mean having an environment worthy of a decorating magazine. The aim is to create a functional and welcoming space where we can live well and feel at peace. Sometimes I find crumbs under the sofa or a cushion out of place, and that's fine. The important thing is to maintain a basic standard of order that allows us to live with peace of mind. One technique I've developed that has made all the difference is what I call the one-touch rule. Whenever I pick something up, I sort it out immediately. If it's a piece of mail, I read it and file it or throw it away. If it's dirty laundry, it goes straight into the basket. If it's a used cup, it goes straight in the sink. This avoids that endless cycle of moving things from one place to another without actually resolving their destination. I remember when I used to pile clean clothes on the bed, promising myself that I would fold them later. The later rarely came, and I ended up having to deal with a mountain of clothes just in time for bed. Now, when I take the clothes off the line, I fold and put them away immediately. It seems like it takes longer, but I actually save energy and avoid that feeling of unfinished business. The concept of microtasks has also revolutionized my routine. Instead of setting aside a whole day for heavy cleaning, I've learned to do small tasks throughout the day. While I'm waiting for the tea to boil, I clean the fridge door. While I'm talking on the phone, I organize a drawer. These are moments that used to be wasted and have now become opportunities to keep the house in order. One of the biggest lessons I've learned is the importance of creating sustainable habits. There's no point in establishing a super strict routine that will leave you exhausted after a week. It's better to do less, but with consistency, than to try to do everything at once and give up due to exhaustion. As the old saying goes, slow goes a long way. I've also discovered the power of having a controlled chaos corner. It's a space, in my case, a drawer in the kitchen, where I allow a certain amount of disorganization to take place. There I keep those things that I'm not sure where to put yet, or items that I need to sort out later. The important thing is that this chaos is contained in one place and doesn't spread throughout the house. Another strategy I've adopted is to create what I call reset routines. These are specific times of the day when I do a quick general organization. I usually do this after breakfast, after lunch, and before bed. These are strategic breaks that prevent clutter from accumulating and keep the house at an acceptable level of organization. And you know what else? I've learned to celebrate the small victories. When I see my kitchen clean before bed, or when I manage to keep the bathroom tidy for a whole week, I make a point of recognizing that effort. This self-worth is important for maintaining motivation and continuing to make progress. One of the most surprising discoveries on this journey was realizing how the organization of our physical space impacts our emotional well-being. When I started keeping my house more organized, I noticed that my mood improved significantly. It was as if the external environment reflected and influenced my internal state. I slept better, felt less anxious, and even more creative. I remember a particularly stressful day at work. I came home exhausted, but when I opened the door and saw everything in order, I felt an immediate sense of relief. That's when I really understood the value of all that effort. It's not just about having a beautiful home, it's about creating a refuge, a space that welcomes you and helps you recharge. One technique that developed naturally is what I call the 30-second rule. If something takes less than 30 seconds to do, I do it immediately. This applies to small tasks like putting a book away on the shelf, hanging a coat on the hanger, or wiping down the sink after using it. It's amazing how these microactions, when added together, prevent the accumulation of larger tasks. Another important discovery was learning to let go. I realized that the fewer things we have, the easier it is to keep everything organized. I started doing a regular sorting of our belongings, donating or discarding items we no longer used. At first, it was difficult. I always thought I might need something in the future. But over time, I learned to be more objective and to value free space more than accumulated objects. One strategy one adopted that has made all the difference is what I call the one-for-one rule. Whenever I bring something new home, I commit to removing a similar item. Bought a new blouse? An old one needs to go. Got a new book? It's time to donate one I've already read and don't intend to reread. This keeps the flow of things balanced and avoids unnecessary accumulation. Something I've learned to value is the power of routine. I set specific times for certain tasks, such as putting the washing machine on every morning before breakfast. This became as automatic as brushing my teeth. The consistency of these small daily actions makes the bigger tasks less frequent and less of a chore. One practice I've adopted that has been extremely useful is what I call the 5-minute patrol. Several times a day, I do a quick sweep of the house, picking up misplaced items and making small adjustments. It's amazing how much we can accomplish in just 5 minutes when we're focused. This practice prevents clutter from accumulating throughout the day. Another technique I've developed is the rotating box system. I have a few organizer boxes that I use to store seasonal items or items that I don't use very often. Every 3 months, I review the contents of these boxes. If I find something I haven't used in that period, I consider donating it or discarding it. This keeps our home free of unnecessary accumulations and helps us to value what really matters. One of the most valuable lessons I've learned on this journey is the importance of being kind to myself. At first, I put too much pressure on myself, wanting everything to be perfect all the time. But the reality is that life happens, and we can't always keep everything flawless, and that's okay. The important thing is to maintain a healthy balance between organization and living. I've developed the habit of doing what I call a night sweep. Before I go to bed, I do a quick run-through of the house, putting things back and preparing the environment for the next day. It's amazing how waking up with my house in order completely changes the tone of my day. It's as if I'm giving my future self a calmer start to the day. One strategy that has worked very well is what I call a transition zone. I've created a space near the entrance to the house where all incoming and outgoing items stay temporarily. This includes shopping bags, mail, keys, etc. This area prevents things from spreading around the house and makes daily organization much easier. I've also learned the importance of involving the senses in home maintenance. It's not just about appearance, but about how the environment makes us feel. I started using pleasant scents, such as candles or diffusers, to create a welcoming atmosphere. This not only makes the house more pleasant, but also motivates me to keep it organized to match the fresh scent. One technique that has been very useful is what I call the eye rule. Basically, I keep the surfaces that are at eye level organized at all times. This creates an immediate impression of order, even if there are some less visible areas that aren't so tidy. It's surprising how positively this affects our perception of space. Another important discovery was learning to see cleaning and organizing as a form of self-care, not as a tedious obligation. When I began to see these tasks as an act of self-love and care for my living space, my attitude changed completely. Now, instead of feeling overwhelmed, I feel empowered by taking care of my home. I've also developed the habit of doing what I call mini challenges. For example, I challenge myself to organize a drawer in 5 minutes or clean out the fridge before a 15-minute podcast is over. This makes the tasks more fun and less intimidating, as well as helping me to manage my time better. One practice I've adopted that has made all the difference is what I call a moment of gratitude for the house. Every day, I take a few minutes to appreciate my home and give thanks for having a space to call my own. This helps me keep perspective and appreciate the work I do to keep everything in order. Finally, one of the greatest achievements on this journey has been realizing that by taking care of my home, I'm actually taking care of myself and my family. An organized and harmonious environment contributes to our mental health, productivity, and general well-being. It's an investment in our comfort and quality of life. Remember, every home is unique, as is every family. The important thing is to find a system that works for you and makes your life easier and more enjoyable. It's not about perfection, but about creating a space that makes you feel good and at peace. With consistency, patience, and a little creativity, you can maintain order and cleanliness in your home, even without the help of your family. And maybe, over time, your example will inspire positive changes in those around you.